Episode 3. If you haven't watched the first and second episode yet, and you've missed a lot, I advise you to watch it first to understand the events of the story. You will find the first and second episode in the description, or in the channel. Let's go. I'm not here for life lessons, I said sharply. I want to know how I can take down Vincent. You know this world better than I do, and you know how I can get to him. The man smiled again, but this time it was a sad smile. Vincent is the embodiment of the world you were once a part of, the world that produced both you and me. But you won't be able to take him down if you don't first understand who you are. I wasn't sure what he meant, but I felt like I was in front of someone who held a secret that could change everything. Who are you? And how do you know so much about me? I asked again, but this time my question was laden with tension and anxiety. The man moved closer and sat down on a rickety wooden chair, gesturing for me to sit across from him. I sat down cautiously, my eyes fixed on his every move. My name is Julian Calderon, he said calmly. I was once a part of this world you're trying to escape from now. I was in your position, facing the same choices you are now. I wanted revenge, to destroy everyone who betrayed me. But I eventually realized that I wouldn't be able to escape this fate unless I first confronted myself. There was something in his voice that conveyed honesty, but also deep sadness. I know Vincent better than you do. We were once friends, or so I thought. But he betrayed me just as he betrayed everyone else. And now you're walking down the same path I once did, a path that leads to an endless abyss. I didn't know what to say. Every word that came out of his mouth carried a great weight, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a dark chasm. So what should I do? I asked, not knowing whether I was truly seeking an answer or just trying to understand what was happening. You need to dismantle the system that created Vincent, not just kill him. You need to find a way to make it collapse from within, to make his followers question their loyalty to him. But this requires strength and a cool head, not blind rage. I started to feel some of my tension dissipate, as if I was finally beginning to understand what he was hinting at. And how can I do that? I asked, starting to see things more clearly. You need support, Julian said. You need people who know this world as well as you do, but who have a personal reason to take down Vincent. You must gather a group of allies who share the same goal. Only through unity can we destroy this monster. His words carried deep meaning, but I knew that putting them into practice would be extremely difficult. I had no allies, and I didn't trust anyone. How could I build a team in a world full of betrayal and treachery? Where will I find these people? I asked, a note of doubt in my voice. We've already started, Julian said with a mysterious smile. The little girl you met, Isabella, is the beginning of this team. She is not just an innocent girl. She is part of a family that was a victim of Vincent, and her family could be a powerful ally if you can earn their trust. Her grandmother knows a lot, and she has been waiting for the chance to exact revenge for years. That piece of information came as a shock to me. I had never imagined that Isabella, with her apparent innocence, could be part of this complex world. But I began to understand that nothing in this world was as it seemed. So, does this mean we're going to work together? I asked Julian. If you're serious about taking down Vincent, you'll need more than just anger and weapons. You'll need a solid plan, and you'll need the right allies. I'll help you build that, but you must be prepared to sacrifice a lot along the way. It was clear to me that I had embarked on a new journey, one that would require all the strength and courage I had. There was no turning back, and there was no other option but to move forward. In the weeks that followed, we began working together. I spent most of my time with Julian, exploring the details of our plan, carefully studying each step. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, and any mistake could be fatal. But I was also determined to accomplish my mission, no matter what it cost me. I began to meet some of the people who were part of this complex world. Some were victims of Vincent, and others were seeking revenge for their own reasons. We began forming a small, but strong, network. I felt like I was getting closer to my goal, and that Vincent wouldn't be able to escape this time. But at the same time, I knew I was moving through a world fraught with danger, and that any moment of inattention could cost me my life. I had to stay vigilant and be ready for anything. In the end, I knew the inevitable confrontation with Vincent was drawing near. It would be a showdown from which neither of us could escape. But I was ready, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in control of my destiny, and that I might be able to achieve the justice I sought. At that moment, I knew I had finally begun to transform from a mere man on the run to someone who bore a destiny stronger than anything else. I had begun writing the final chapter of my story, and it was now only a matter of whether I could finish it successfully or not. In the following days, the plan began to take on a more defined and detailed shape. Julian and I spent long hours discussing strategies, studying Vincent's movements, and carefully considering every step we needed to take. It was clear that Vincent wasn't just a powerful man. He controlled a complex network of relationships and influence, and reaching him required more than just a straightforward plan. Isabella and her grandmother were essential parts of our plan. Gradually, I realized that the grandmother was not just an elderly woman living in the shadows. She carried within her wisdom and old experiences far beyond what I had imagined. She spoke of the secrets of the great families, the agreements and conflicts that shaped the history of these mafias, and old stories of revenge and feuds that many had never heard of. I also began to meet other members of our growing network. There was Ricardo, a former mafia soldier who had been cast out due to conflicts with Vincent. Ricardo had a strong personality and military experience, and he knew how to manage operations from the shadows. I also met Maria, a woman who had once been close to Vincent, but betrayed him when she discovered he was responsible for her brother's death. Maria was an expert in hacking and gathering secret information, and she knew all the corners of the network Vincent had built. We knew that time was against us. Vincent was expanding his drug and arms trafficking operations and was preparing for bigger moves to ensure his control over new territories. But what he didn't know was that we were watching every step he took, working to gather evidence that would incriminate him and expose his true face. We realized that a direct attack on Vincent might be dangerous and ineffective. So, we decided to work on undermining his power from within. The idea was to target the people Vincent relied on, convincing them that their loyalty to him would lead to their downfall and that we had the power to offer something better. The first step was to target Carlo, one of Vincent's loyal leaders. Carlo was responsible for securing large drug shipments and relied on a chain of intermediaries to ensure these shipments couldn't be traced. But we knew his weakness. Carlo was hiding information about his real profits, skimming off some of the money without Vincent's knowledge. Through Maria, we managed to gather evidence of this theft, and then we used this information to send a veiled threat to Carlo. The message was clear. We know what you're doing, and we can protect your secret, but at a price. Carlo had no choice but to join us, and in doing so, we managed to drive a wedge between him and Vincent. Our plan started to bear fruit. One by one, some of Vincent's network members began to pull back or turn to our side. Vincent noticed these movements, but somehow, he thought they were just internal issues he could easily control. But we knew this was just the beginning. There was still a major obstacle ahead of us: how to get to Vincent himself. Vincent was extremely cautious, constantly moving between different locations, and was surrounded by trained bodyguards. It was almost impossible to reach him publicly without drawing attention. But then, one night, we were presented with an unexpected opportunity. Maria had been monitoring Vincent's communications continuously and managed to hack into the computer of one of his close advisors. Through this hack, we discovered that Vincent was planning a secret meeting with a group of top mafia leaders at a luxurious villa on the outskirts of the city. The meeting was set to finalize a new deal that would shift the balance of power in the region. This was the opportunity we had been waiting for. If we could reach that meeting, we could cut off the snake's head and strike Vincent at his core. We began preparing for the major operation. We knew that failure was not an option and that this attack would be our only chance to end Vincent's reign. A complex plan was set, involving Ricardo and his team infiltrating the villa before Vincent's arrival, planting listening devices and hidden cameras, while Maria would take charge of disabling security systems and cutting communications once the operation started. Everything was going according to plan. On the night of the meeting, tension was at its peak. I was monitoring events from a distance, feeling an indescribable anxiety. We knew that even a small mistake could cost us our lives, but there was also a feeling that we were on the verge of achieving something big. At the critical moment, when the meeting started, Maria received a signal indicating that Vincent had arrived. The villa was surrounded by bodyguards, and everything was proceeding quietly. The listening devices began broadcasting what was happening in the meeting, and we could hear Vincent confidently speaking with the other Mafia leaders. But suddenly, everything changed. One of the guards discovered one of the hidden cameras, and the alarm blared through the air. We realized at that moment that our plan had been exposed, and that there was no longer time to retreat. Ricardo ordered his men to move, and a fierce battle erupted throughout the villa. The sound of gunfire was deafening, and the screams filled the place. I was deeply worried about everyone's fate, but I also knew that this was the decisive moment. Amid the chaos, Ricardo managed to reach the meeting room, where Vincent was hiding behind a barrier of armed men. The confrontation was intense and swift, ending with Ricardo being seriously wounded, but he managed to reach Vincent. At that moment, the two stood face to face, and Vincent knew his end had come. "This is the end, Vincent," Ricardo said in a strained voice, pointing his weapon at Vincent's head. But before he could fire, another group of guards who had been in the basement appeared, and the balance of power shifted again. They managed to pull Ricardo away from Vincent, but not before one of the men shot Vincent, inflicting a fatal wound. Chaos spread throughout the villa. The guards were in a state of panic, while Ricardo and his comrades tried to escape. They barely managed to flee as the sounds of police sirens rapidly approached. When we returned to our hideout, everyone was physically or mentally wounded. The operation was partially successful. Vincent was dead, but the cost was high. We lost many of our men, and Ricardo was in critical condition. I stood there, reflecting on what had happened, realizing that I had reached the end of a long and exhausting journey. But I also felt a deep emptiness inside me. Revenge had been achieved, but the question remained, what next? I didn't know the answer. I only knew that the world I had lived in had ended, and now I stood at a new crossroads. There had been a lot of blood and tears shed in this battle, but in the end, I had to face the truth. Revenge might not be the end of the road, but the beginning of something new. That night, I sat alone, thinking about everything that had happened. I knew that I would never be able to return to a normal life, but I was determined to find a new path, one where I could live in peace with myself and the world around me. Perhaps that was the greatest challenge I had ever faced, and perhaps it was the beginning of a new story. The end.